Hello, Patreon subscribers. I wanted to do a quick video today about a little how-to. I haven't done a little how-to video in a little while. Lots of time lapses, but no how-tos. So to get started here, what we're going to do is just gesso this MDF board. So I like to paint on MDF board. It's nice and sturdy. It's easy to cut. And since I use a lot of antique frames, I often have to cut pieces to size because the frames are all odd sizes. Like this one's like 8.5 by 11.5 or 8.5 by 11, something like that. So anyway, now you could paint on this straight on and it'd probably be fine, but for the archival nature of it and to give the oil paint a nice base, I use gesso, and I like to use black gesso. So this is a black acrylic gesso. You can do oils over acrylics. You can't do acrylics over oils. That's the general rule of thumb. So this stuff here, I'm going to lay on a couple of coats of this, 2 coats. You can sand it afterwards lightly with some like 220 really fine grit paper, sandpaper. I actually like to have a little bit of texture on mine. My stuff doesn't need to be, you see my work. It's not really a requirement that it have a super fine base. Anyway, it kind of adds to it a little bit because of the whole folk nature of what I do. So anyway, we're gonna add a couple layers of this. Shake it up really good first. And then you want to make sure that you're using a nice, clean, dust-free brush. They do recommend that you not put the brush directly into the basin of gesso, just in case you're adding particulates. But if you start off with a nice clean brush, it really doesn't matter. So I just take my brush and I make sure to pound it out a little bit and make sure there's no dust in there. And then I take a different brush and I make sure that there's no dust left on this. And I've already dusted this, blown it out with an air compressor. But just for the sake of, see, actually there's a little tiny bit of dust left on there. So make sure to get that off there. All the way at the bottom too, I use a baseboard to kind of raise things up and down so I don't have to move my easel too much. I just keep boards nearby and raise it up and down using these as needed. But anyway, so now that it's nice and dusted, go ahead and apply our gesso. Now, I get a liberal amount on the brush, scrape it off just lightly. I start at the top and I do nice wide swaths all the way down. If you've ever painted a house, you know that that's the way that you paint a house too, is you do crisscross patterns, and it's just the best way to cover your surface evenly. At least so I've found, so I've been told by others. I'll get some more on there. Do the same thing again, just lower. Nice crisscross pattern. Continuing the crisscross with the brush as I go over it. Now, I'm sure that even something as simple as gessoing a board, I'm sure there's as many opinions as there are artists. So, not saying that this is absolutely the only way to do this. It is just the way that I do it. By the way, I keep this brush. It's a great brush, and it doesn't lose hairs, and it's easy to clean. It's good and sturdy, and it's got a nice fat brush tip on it. So I use this exclusively for my gesso. Now, the nice thing about this stuff that I use is it dries incredibly fast. You can already see that it is dry to the touch up here. So why do I use black gesso? Well, 2 reasons. I do all of my sketching with red Prismacolor pencils, and I sketch directly onto the surface. And I like the way that the red looks. I like the way that it feels. If it ends up bleeding through in the oils, it looks kind of cool. And this shows up really strong on the black surface. So you can really see it. And also the red tends to stand up to early layers of paint as you throw those on there. Meaning you can still see it through the base layers of paint, especially if you're using washes or lighter colors and thin layers. So I like that about it as well. So that's why the black. So you can see this is already dry, no acrylics coming off on my fingertips. So I'm going to give it about another 30 seconds, and then I'm going to go back over it again. And then I just use the hose actually to rinse this guy off, to make sure to blow it out really strong so none of this gets stuck up in there and clogs up my brush for the future. Because I don't want to use my mineral spirits that I use for my oils on this, because that will ruin the brush for the gesso purpose. So yeah, just water, maybe a little soap if you want to throw it in there, but I've never used soap on this guy. Just blow it out really strongly with the hose. So anyway, that's the tutorial for today. I'm gonna add my second layer now. In a few minutes, I'm gonna get started sketching and get started on my new piece. So yeah, thanks for being here. Thanks for checking out what I do. And feel free to share and tell others to subscribe. Recommendations mean a lot. All right, cheers.